Good afternoon. I'm Staff Sergeant Richard Duvall, and I am a military working dog handler in the United States Air Force. I am currently stationed overseas in the UK, and I'd like to give you a little bit of insight as to what it is that I actually do and what many others like me do. By doing this, I would like to talk about the origins of the military working dog, some of the wars we fought in, and the current operations we are taking part in at home and abroad. Well, basically, ever since there has been armies and militaries, there has been dogs serving in those armies. The Romans were the first to really put the dogs into use, and what they did, and it's unknown what kind of dogs they actually used, but it was said that they were a very large breed, and that they were sometimes upwards of 150 pounds. They would outfit them with chainmail and large spike collars, and have them in a formation much like you would have cavalry in formation. And they would release them into their enemies, into the enemy lines, enemy formations, and drive them back. Now, if you can imagine what that must have been like to been an opposing force and look up and see what sometimes could have been upwards of 1,000 dogs released at you, just imagine the thunder and the barking and the yelping that's going on, and they're coming at you, and then you're fighting those dogs off. And about the time you get something like that fought off, now you have the people that you have to fight as well. That must have been horrifying, just absolutely horrifying. Later on, that's pretty much how they used the dogs then. And then later on, the dogs kind of turned into a gift. And what would happen is department heads or kings or queens and presidents, when traveling different countries, what they would do is give their dogs from that country to other dogs, and this would foster good relations with different countries. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but it really was, because back then it was hard to get dogs from one place to another. You know, you'd have to travel several weeks to get these type of dogs, and so say like the Germans would have the German Shepherds, and the British would have the British Bulldogs and the Great Danes, and so it really helped foster relations between different countries. It really was an important thing. So even when they weren't fighting, they were actually serving a different role. The second thing I want to talk to you about is the wars in which some of the dogs fought in, especially for the Americans. The first thing they fought in for us would be World War I, and what they were used for were messenger dogs. And as you can see here, they have a little thing around their neck, and they would put a little message in there and send that dog to a different handler, and then run up and down the line delivering information. Now, today that doesn't seem like a big deal either, but in 1917, it really was a big deal, because we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have radios, we didn't have, well, they had telephones, but they didn't have telephones what like you and I would consider a telephone. They would have some type of landline. So, and the dogs are very fast, they run very fast, they're hard to shoot, they're hard to capture. So it was a very effective communication tool, and they did that job very well. In World War II, that's when the military working dog program kind of formalized, and by formalized I mean what you would have is when the dogs would come in, they'd go through a boot camp or a basic training or something like that, and everybody would have the same training, and they'd all have to meet the same level of aptitude, if you will, to be considered a military working dog. And by doing that, that put everybody on the same page, and that was important. So everybody had the same amount of training when they went into war. They also started producing different types of dogs, the sentry dogs, which would patrol your bases and look out for enemies, your mine dogs, which would search for mines in front of tanks or forces moving up, and your patrol dogs, which were basically just dogs that would attack people and scare people. It was a psychological deterrent that kept people from trying to get in places. And then that kind of jump-started the whole program, and that catapulted us into the Vietnam War, where 5,000 military working dogs served. It is estimated that they saved an upwards of 10,000 lives, and how they did this was with their keen senses. In a jungle environment, if you knew that enemy was in front of you 10 yards, that was a benefit. You can't see in the jungle. Everything you go through is very cluttered. So dogs would use their senses, which would be sight, hearing, and their sense of smell, and would be able to tell when the enemy's close. And then this would mean that we could take the fight to the enemy and not have the enemy take the fight to us. And this brings me to my third point, which would be the current operations we're involved in. Now, in the post 9/11 world that we live in today, explosive detection is the primary function of a military working dog. We're constantly at home and abroad using the dog's nose to find these explosives. And as you know, in Afghanistan and Iraq, two different theaters, dogs are constantly on patrol with units. They're constantly finding homemade devices, homemade bombs, homemade bombs in the road or on vehicles or whatever it might be. And they do that really well, and they're still saving lives today. Another mission that a lot of people don't know about is the Secret Service missions. Anytime the president, vice president, secretary of state, or any high-ranking government official goes someplace, there's a dog there that sweeps the area before they show up. They sweep the area, and then the Secret Service comes in behind them and secures the area. And what this means is that you're not going to get an explosive device in or around that area. It really safeguards the government officials. And a lot of people don't know that. They just think the president has a Secret Service and that's it. But there's a whole lot of time and effort goes into securing these officials. And the last thing we really do, it's not very high profile either, is a law enforcement job at home. And we use these dogs just like your civilian law enforcement agencies use their dogs. We find drugs, find bad guys, and things like that, and they do a good job there too. So while we're not fighting the war, we still have a mission to complete at home. Well, let's sum everything up that I talked to you about today. I gave you the origins of the military working dogs, how the Romans were kind of the first people to really put them to use. We talked about the different wars they fought in, about the messenger dogs in World War I, and then how in World War II that they kind of catapulted the military working dog program, formalized it, if you will. And then we talked about some of the current operations we're taking part in at home and abroad. So the next time you see a dog, know that yes, they are a lovely animal. Yes, they are a great pet, but they also provide a valuable role into the military and our way of life everywhere here and overseas. Thank you.